What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical, average American here today to react and learn about a part of UK history called the Blitz. Now, to be completely honest, I have never heard of this before, but apparently, this is a really big part of British history. I can see from the date here, we're talking about September 1940. So I think we're definitely talking about World War II. But as for an event called the Blitz, never really heard of it. Not something we talked about in our American history classes that I remember. So today, I really want to take a look at this video by fascinating horror and learn what this is all about. So let's take a look.
On the 7th of September 1940, a year into World War II, Germany launched an unprecedented bombing raid on London. Until this point, German bombers had focused mainly on military targets. Now they turned their attention to civilian ones.
Unprecedented bombing raid on London? London was straight up bombed by Germany. You would think this would be something that we would discuss in some amount of detail in our American history classes, but like this, what? How have I never heard of this? London was literally bombed? What? They're using the word unprecedented. So what exactly was the scope of this?
In an attack that killed 450 and injured 3 times that number. Moreover, this attack marked a drastic change in German tactics. From this day forward, London would be bombed almost every single night for the next 57 nights, in a sustained campaign of destruction that became known as the Blitz.
What? I'm floored. I'm speechless. Like, how many nights in a like? And look at the photos, by the way. I'm not even talking about the images on the screen because I can't even believe what I'm hearing. If if anything like this had happened in the United States during World War II, like we'd never hear the end of it here, because it's an important part of history and it needs to be talked about and remembered and discussed. And I guess just because this is like a part of British history, sad to say, it doesn't get the same spotlight here in the United States. I've never heard anybody talk about this here.
This day forward, London would be bombed almost every single night for the next 57 nights.
57 straight nights of bombing in London. That's unbelievable. Like, I know that's what's being said to me, but I still can't believe this happened. The word blitz, in our history classes, we're taught about blitzkrieg. I remember it's like a German word for like a fast, aggressive surprise attack. This seemed to have some of those qualities, although was it fast? Like 2 months of onslaught. Oh my God.
In 1940, France surrendered to German invaders. This left Germany, under the command of dictator Adolf Hitler, to focus its attention on Britain.
Yeah.
Hitler had a strong desire to carry out a full-scale invasion of Britain, but there was one obstacle that stood in his way: Britain's Air Force.
Right.
The Royal Air Force, or RAF, was formidable. Though it had far fewer aircraft than the German Luftwaffe, its pilots were highly motivated to defend their country, and were bold.
So, Britain was at a numbers disadvantage in regards to aircraft, but the soldiers were so highly trained and had such great ability, it was still like this great threat that Germany wasn't quite able to overcome yet.
bolstered by volunteers from around the world. Britain's use of the new technology of radar was also much more advanced than Germany's,
Okay.
giving them a significant edge when it came to responding to incoming attacks.
Okay.
On top of this, German attackers had many different objectives: destroying facilities on the ground, engaging in the air, and targeting and blockading ships in the waters around Britain.
Jeez.
British fighters, on the other hand, were focused almost entirely on engaging the German threat. This singular purpose, combined with technology like the highly maneuverable Spitfire, allowed Britain's relatively small force to withstand one German attack after another.
Wow, that's really impressive. This is another detail I didn't really know about. That the British Air Force wasn't that huge, but it still withstood all these attacks and put up a really big defense and offense just based on ability, really, and some better uses of technology, like they were saying, like radar, and some of the aircraft were just a bit better and better used.
Germany's superior numbers, however, eventually started to wear down the RAF.
Okay.
Were it not for a chain of events that took place in August 1940, it's likely that Germany would eventually have prevailed.
Oh.
It was late in August when some German bombers accidentally dropped their payloads on civilian areas near London.
What?
Up until this point, Germany had aimed mainly for military targets, and so it was a shocking development that they should appear to target civilians.
That is shocking. Beyond shocking. This was on purpose? Bombing civilians outside London? I mean, as far as the United States in World War II, like, the biggest thing that comes to mind for us in terms of attack on our home soil is Pearl Harbor, where a lot of Americans died from a Japanese bombing. Other than that, we really didn't face much in the way of bombings and actual physical attacks on our homeland. You know, the United States was kind of fortunate, and it's kind of away from a lot of other countries, like, you know, not that far from Japan, and maybe not that far from Europe when you go east, but compared to the rest of Europe, compared to, you know, the UK and their distance from, like, Germany, I guess we kind of felt a little bit like we were safe out here in the United States. Then again, I wasn't around during World War II. I'm sure Americans and everyone was terrified no matter where you were physically located. But, yeah, we certainly never had anything close to 2 months straight of bombings on our homeland. Nothing that comes close to that.
In response, on the 25th of August 1940, Britain bombed Berlin, enraging Hitler to the point that he commanded a change in strategy. German planes would now focus on decimating British cities, London in particular.
Oh my God.
The British government had long feared that Germany would launch a campaign against the civilian population. Some preparations had already been made. In 1939, thousands of children had been evacuated from urban areas to the countryside. Shelters had also been distributed to city dwellers. Anderson shelters were buried in back gardens, while Morrison shelters could be installed inside the home.
Jeez. You know, it's kind of good to... You know, I'm not the biggest, like, history buff. There's a lot about history I don't know. And here in the United States, I'm sure we learn the American perspective on world history, which explains why I don't know about the Blitz, even though this seems extremely substantial. It's good to hear about these things, I think. As horrific and terrifying as it is, like, it's good to remember that this was the reality for people, you know, not 80 years ago. Not that long ago. You got lots of British school children having to get transported out to the countryside, away from their home and their families, and jeez, it's crazy to think about.
Blackouts had also been enforced in many urban areas to make it difficult for enemy planes to locate their targets.
Wow.
Beyond these preparations, though, life had continued with some semblance of normality.
Okay.
People went to work as normal, gathered in pubs and cinemas, and went about their daily business in cities that were, for the most part, intact. This all changed on the 7th of September, 1940,
Oh, God.
a day that would later become known as Black Saturday.
Oh.
On this day, a massive German raid killed over 450 people and wounded more than 1,500 in London alone.
I mean, this must be such a famous event in Britain. Like, every British person, every British child must learn about this in school. Like, this is crazy. I still cannot believe that, like, I didn't know about this. This is like an American not knowing about Pearl Harbor in Hawaii being bombed. This is like hundreds of people dying. I mean, but this is... Pearl Harbor was mostly a military base and military ships. This is like London. So really it'd be more similar to if New York City got bombed. Which is more equivalent to like 9/11, which of course every American knows about as being like one of the most traumatic events in our history, recent history. So I don't know, it's just you can't overstate how substantial this is. Trying to like square that with the fact that I think myself and a lot of Americans don't really know about this event.
Shocking and devastating as it was, Black Saturday was just a taste of what was to come.
What?
After this date, bombing raids continued almost every night. Population centres such as Liverpool, Bristol, Manchester, Cardiff, Glasgow and Southampton were targeted, but London was subjected to by far the most intense bombing campaign of all.
I had no idea. I literally had no idea about this bombing campaign, that London and other cities in Britain were actually bombed and destroyed and people died on British home soil to this extent. I had no idea. No idea. This is... hearing this for the first time is mind-blowing.
These raids were devastating. Whole streets were obliterated. Churches, schools, cinemas, hospitals and pubs were flattened or consumed by flames. Air raid sirens rang out every night, sometimes multiple times each night.
Oh my God.
Most citizens were, on a daily basis, exposed to death, destruction, and scenes of absolute horror.
Jeez, I mean, I think I can say, no matter what trauma Americans have gone through, we've gone through a lot. I can't say we've had anything that really comes close to as traumatic as this on our homeland. Nothing that compares to this. This is insane. This is, they said like around 60 straight days of bombings and air raids and sirens and death. I can't even imagine.
They lived their lives ready at a moment's notice to flee to shelters, where they would spend hours huddling cold and afraid as explosions rang out through the city above.
Oh my God.
When the all clear finally sounded, they would emerge to fight fires, clear rubble, bury the dead, and treat the injured, knowing that, in all likelihood, the same thing would happen again the next night, and the next, and the next. Many famous London landmarks were damaged but not destroyed.
Oh, wow.
Buckingham Palace, the Imperial War Museum, the Tower of London, the London Zoo, St Paul's Cathedral, and the Houses of Parliament were all hit. But
oh my God. I never knew about this. I literally never knew about this. The extent and that famous landmarks were bombed. Like Buckingham Palace. It almost doesn't even sound real. I know this happened. I don't want to come across as a Blitz denier. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying this is so outrageous. It's like my brain is like, what do you mean? What do you mean London and Britain got bombed like that? And the museum and the famous monuments that like even us Americans know about in Britain got damaged.
But survived, in no small part thanks to the heroic work of firefighters in the city.
Wow.
While many famous buildings were saved, thousands of ordinary homes and workplaces were not. The Docklands area of London, home to many working-class families, was particularly badly hit. The nearby docks were a desirable target, and so attracted many bombs.
Oh, wow.
This combined with a shortage of space in shelters and very few resources for rebuilding bomb-damaged areas to make the Docklands one of the places most severely affected.
Yeah. Wow, I mean, I'm not even talking about some of these images. That's Churchill, right? Some of these images, like I've never seen these images. These are absolutely jaw-dropping images.
Despite the unending horror of the Blitz, though, life carried on. People went to work and some pubs, theatres and cinemas remained open.
I mean, look at this. Look at it. Like, they're talking about life going on in Britain, in London. I can't believe this image. People are just walking over rubble, destroyed buildings. Like, just going about their daily routine. Trying to. With things literally exploded around them. I mean, I can't imagine. This is unbelievable.
People were often pictured carrying on with their day-to-day work despite the devastation around them. There are many examples of people using humor as a way of dealing with the horrific conditions of the Blitz. And pictures from the time appear to document a sense of cheerful endurance.
That's so British. That's so British. That's a really cool little fact. Like, British humor prevailed even in the darkest of times. That British attitude. That's funny. That's actually nice to, like, that they put that in there.
The attitude that prevailed, at least according to official accounts, was typified by the now famous morale-boosting campaigns run by the British government, with slogans like, "Your courage, your cheerfulness, your resolution will bring us victory."
Yeah.
And "Keep calm and carry on."
That's where that came from?
This Blitz spirit is something that is often fondly remembered and has become a point of national pride. But at the same time, it represents only some of the story.
Okay.
Subjected to nightly near-death experiences, many people suffered a range of mental health problems.
Of course.
Night terrors, bedwetting, nervous collapse, and psychosis.
Of course.
Some gave up on seeking shelter when the air raid sirens sounded. In the blackout-darkened streets, crime was at an all-time high, and there were few resources to combat it.
I mean, I'm just sitting here listening to this, trying to soak this in. I genuinely had no idea that the UK suffered such devastation on your homeland, like to this extent. This needs to be made so much more clear to American history students. When we're growing up and learning about history, we learn about World War II. This event needs so much more attention, I think, here.
Fear and nervous tension were pervasive. Personal records from the time reflect the fact that almost everyone was terrified and suffering, but had no choice but to carry on with their lives.
Wow.
The fact that they did carry on was viewed by the government as evidence of high morale among civilians, and this was used extensively for propaganda purposes. In fact, the stress and suffering of the British people was made worse due to the government not providing adequate shelters.
What is this? This is where we're at? Having to sleep in a box? Is this like to protect you in case your house is falling down, or like this image is kind of unbelievable. They're talking about like propaganda. British people were putting on a brave face, trying to make the best of the situation, cope, and the government was kind of making things seem more okay than they actually were.
Anderson shelters were damp and cold and would provide protection only from shrapnel and not from an actual bomb blast. Morrison shelters would protect those inside from collapsing buildings, but not from the fires or thick choking clouds of dust that often followed. Some dedicated shelters were built using incorrect materials, resulting in them simply crumbling when hit, providing little or no protection.
Jeez.
There was great demand for deep underground shelters, similar
Right.
to those that the government had constructed for its own personnel.
Yeah, okay. I can say without a doubt, like, the United States has never experienced something like this. Like, people having to sleep inside of cages, go underground, bomb sirens. No, no, no. We've endured a lot of things, but nothing quite like this.
But the government was reluctant to provide these, fearing that if they were available to ordinary people, those ordinary people might retreat underground and never leave, thus hampering the war effort. As a result, Londoners were initially forbidden from using the tube network for shelter.
Oh my god.
Desperate, many Londoners did so anyway by buying tickets and refusing to leave the station during air raids.
Oh my god. The London Tube was used as a bomb shelter. I never knew this.
It was only after an escalating series of protests that the government relented and allowed ordinary people to shelter in tube stations deep below ground.
Yeah, yeah.
These proved popular and were soon fitted with toilets, beds, medical facilities, and more.
Unbelievable.
These shelters, of course, were not without their hazards. Some years later, in 1943, 173 people died in a crush at Bethnal Green Underground Station, the worst single loss of civilian life during World War II to take place in the UK.
Oh my god.
As shelters were developed and people adapted to the hellish uncertainty of life under Blitz conditions, the bombing raids continued up and down the country.
Wow.
London was hammered night after night, while attacks on other cities were more sporadic but were devastating when they came.
Other cities.
On the 14th of November 1940, the city of Coventry was devastated by a particularly prolonged raid, which flattened 4,300 homes. The destruction was so comprehensive that some German leaders would thereafter use the word Coventriet or Coventried as a byword for total destruction. In May of 19...
Jeez, I don't... There's only so many different ways I can explain how disturbing this is to learn about. Well, you know, I have the fortune of sitting here learning about it. Like, I can't imagine experiencing it, living this. I'm trying to at least put myself there a little bit, and it's horrifying.
1941, after an unimaginable period of near-daily raids, the Blitz came to an end,
Okay.
called off by Hitler himself.
Okay.
He now wished to send his forces east to fight the Soviet Union, and could not spare the air power needed to continue the relentless attack.
Jeez.
Unbeknownst to him, however, the Blitz that he had overseen had already changed the course of the war, though not in the way he had hoped.
Oh.
Hitler's shift in focus from hitting military targets to hitting population centers had allowed the Royal Air Force a chance to recover, rebuild, and reinforce.
Yeah.
Had the Luftwaffe continued to strike military targets, Britain's forces would have been decimated.
I see. Unfortunately, focusing on civilian centers, that was horrible. Had a side effect of Britain getting some reprieve for its military, to rebuild the military, which, good, turned out to be a mistake, perhaps, for Hitler. I mean, the whole situation is so horrible, but it's interesting that probably turned out to be maybe a tactical error.
As it was, they now stood a fighting chance against the German war machine.
Yeah.
The people of London, Liverpool, Manchester, and other British cities who survived the Blitz survived a living nightmare,
Yeah.
sometimes with very little protection or support.
Jeez.
Their suffering, at least, was not for nothing.
Right. Jeez. Oh my God, that is a lot. That's a lot. That's just to go from having no idea to learning about this. This is a horrifying story. It's not, you can watch a horror movie or read a fictional horror book and be scared. And then there's horror that actually happened. This actually happened. And sort of like the shock and sort of maybe embarrassment of being ignorant of all this as an American, kind of processing that. But anyway, I'm really glad I took some time here today to learn about this part of British history. It's horrible. I'm glad I know about it now. It's good to learn about these things, discuss these things, because they did happen. Man. Yeah, I don't know. Hopefully all the British people, back when this happened, rest in peace, all that, It's tough, talking about stuff like this, because it's easy to just view it as a part of history, and it's like reading it in a book, like, oh yeah, it's like, no, you got to think that this actually happened to people. You got to put yourself there and make it real to truly appreciate the horror of this. That's what I try to do anyway. So I didn't enjoy this story, but I enjoyed learning about this. So if you enjoyed this as well, feel free to give this video a like or leave a comment with your thoughts on the Blitz, this part of British history. That'd be awesome to hear about. And if you're interested in more videos like this, me reacting to Britain and learning about British culture, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching, and see you next time.